Karen Reed and her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, were bar hopping on a snowy night in Massachusetts. At the end of the night, they were invited to a house party at the home of a fellow officer in Canton, Massachusetts. When Karen and John arrived, Karen did not exit the car. John did. From that point forward, there are two very different versions of what happened. Prosecutors say Karen was mad at John and purposely struck him with her car and left him on the ground to die in the snow. But Karen and her defense team say John went to the party. Something terrible happened inside the house, and his body was placed outside where he was found dead the next morning. Karen has been charged with murder but claims she is the victim of a big cover-up by police. Meanwhile, both inside and outside the courthouse, things have been getting very tense. A local blogger who goes by the name Turtle Boy organized a protest outside the courthouse to support Karen. Tonight, we speak live with Turtle Boy, then we'll bring in the attorneys for Karen Reed as we investigate the death of John O'Keefe and the allegations of a police cover-up. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you with us. Now, Karen Reed, like every other criminal defendant, when they're charged, is presumed innocent. And it's no different in this case. But in many of the cases we cover on Court TV, right, the presumption of innocence applies, but you know, and I think sometimes in the back of my mind, yeah, they're presumed innocent, but come on. We've from the evidence that's been released already, it doesn't look really good for that defendant. This case is a little different, and potentially a lot different, depending upon how the evidence plays out, because there are two very different versions of what happened that night in Canton, Massachusetts. Now, you know we rarely hear from criminal defendants. They don't usually testify at trial, and they usually don't talk before the trial. But in this case, that's not the case. I mean, she has spoken. Karen Reed has spoken out. And even though we rarely hear from defendants, we've heard from this one. So that makes this case a little bit different because the defense has an alternative story about what happened here. You know, many times the defense is, oh, they can't prove their case. Period, end of story. They don't have the evidence. And as we know in our system, the defense doesn't have to prove anything. They don't have to put one witness on the stand. They don't even have to come up with an alternative theory as to what happened in the case. It's up to the prosecution to prove it beyond any and all reasonable doubt. But again, here, things are different. There's an alleged police cover-up here that John O'Keefe went inside that house, which was a party with fellow officers and family members, etc. And the allegation is that something happened in there, and that's all being covered up now. So that is a bold move. Again, rarely do you see this play out, especially before a trial, but the defense has been very, very vocal about it. And how would you react? And this is, and I'm not presuming this case is one way or the other, but I always think about this. If I've been wrongfully accused of something, would I just sit back and wait for my moment in court? Or would I literally be screaming on the steps of the courthouse so everyone knew that I was innocent? I think I would choose the latter. That's the way I would react. Now, someone could be guilty and react that way, but if I was innocent, knowing myself, despite what my attorneys may or may not be telling me, I think I'd be saying that, especially if I was accused of murdering someone that I cared about, someone that I loved. And that's the allegation in this case, although prosecutors are saying they're in the middle of this big fight and this breakup, etc. So here's the thing that has happened in this case, which again is another rare development, is that Karen Reed has supporters who've shown up in large numbers in this usually sleepy courthouse in Norfolk County in Dedham, Massachusetts. I've been to that courthouse. There's not a million courtrooms there. I think there's actually 2 in the building. And the one where this case is being held is the very historical Sacco and Vanzetti courtroom. Not much happens in Dedham. I mean, it's not like there's a bunch of people. showing up. Like if you're in the middle of a big city, you could always find people that might show up at a courtroom. Here you have to be there for a specific reason. And that's what happened, large numbers. And they are clearly supporting Karen Read and think something is going on here that is terribly, terribly wrong. Again, at the outset, we want to investigate and get as much information as possible on the show as we continue to track this case as it moves towards a trial. I don't know. I haven't seen all the evidence. I haven't heard all the evidence. She's presumed innocent, but anyone that the defense is pointing the finger at is also presumed innocent, right? That's the way our system works. But tonight we're going to try to figure out what exactly is going on in that town. And for me, it begins with this outpouring of support for Karen Read. Take a look at what is actually happening in Dedham, Massachusetts, when there are hearings in this case. Take a look.
Free Karen Read! 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 Free Karen
Well, we're not putting up with that. We're right here today, Jim McDermott, and we're not going to be quiet. We got it. Imagine one day you wake up and your daughter is telling you, Dad, they're telling me I killed John. They're telling me I killed John and I'm scared. And then you go, you're involuntarily sectioned for 5 hours in Brockton at the same hospital, I believe, that the boyfriend has just pronounced dead in. And you're sectioned there against your will. And then you were brought back to One Meadows Avenue, where the people who were kissing your when you were helping out their niece and nephew for the last 2 years, helping raise them, those people are suddenly turning on you and telling you that you killed your boyfriend who you love dearly. So we are here because the institutions that we are supposed to trust, the police and the district attorney's office, have completely failed us. They've completely failed not only Karen Read and not only John O'Keefe, but they have failed all of us.
I mean, it's an unbelievable scene. I mean, it's reminiscent of the cheering that we heard at Johnny Depp's trial when I was there. And this is not a Hollywood star. This is an accused murderer getting a standing ovation as she enters the courtroom. What is going on out there? Well, the man who organized all of that is joining us tonight, our special guest, blogger, social media personality, owner of TB Daily News, and the man who organized the Karen Read protest. He's joining us tonight, apparently from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Aidan Kearney, also known as Turtle Boy. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Vinny.
Let me start here. Aidan, Turtle Boy, what do you prefer?
You can call me Turtle Boy.
Okay, I'll go with Turtle Boy, not a problem. I understand. That's what everybody calls you. So let me start here.
Yeah, I'm used to it now.
Yeah, so the first question, how did you get involved in this case? Like, you were a sports guy, weren't you?
No, I mean, I started the blog about 10 years ago about sports, and nobody really cared about sports. So I started really getting into investigative stories, and I became an award-winning journalist along the way. And I've built a pretty large following in the New England area. And so when stories like this happen, I gravitate towards them. But this particular story is by far the biggest and longest story we've ever done. We're on part like 97 at this point. I don't know how many hours of YouTube streaming shows we've done about this, but it just seems like it never ends. And, the following has obviously grown significantly as a result of this because the story is so mesmerizing. It just every day there's something new about the story that you couldn't be more shocked than the previous day. And then like yesterday, we find out that Michael Proctor, the detective in this, made up a fake company that does not exist and wrote in his report that they plowed Fairview Road, a company that does not exist, in order to avoid interviewing the actual plow driver who I interviewed yesterday. And as it turns out, he went by 34 Fairview Road and he reported seeing no body. He said that he would have seen a body if it was lying there. He's a 217-pound man, 10 feet from the curb. He said there was no body on the ground. And the lead investigator for the Massachusetts State Police, who is good friends with the people who are believed to be the perpetrators of this horrible, horrific crime, has known these people his entire life. He lives in Canton, and he never interviewed the only eyewitness who can definitively say that there was no body on the ground on 34 Fairview Road that night.
And again, as I said off the top, Karen Read presumed innocent. Everyone that the defense is accusing is presumed innocent as well. But we know this way this is playing out, and the defense is going to make these same accusations that you're making. That obviously we have no idea what the truth is, and hopefully everything comes out inside the courtroom and the jury tells us eventually. So you have no personal connection to Karen Read.
No, I didn't know who she was before this. I mean, I briefly saw it in the news when it happened last year and didn't pursue it. I thought it was a horrible tragedy when it happened, like a horrible accident. I think a lot of people assume that. And then what really caught my attention was a court filing in April about the Google search. Like that was what caught my attention. And I looked into it and I read Alan Jackson's 94-page affidavit accompanied by Richard Forensic, what his exact title is, Richard Green. He's basically a data nerd. He looks through your phone, finds things you deleted. I read it all, and every page I read further, my jaw just dropped. And I said, this can't be happening. How is this real? And I assumed, like, they have a woman Googling at 2:27 in the morning who was inside that house, how long to die in cold, claiming that John O'Keefe never came in that house. So why would you Google that if you thought John O'Keefe was home in his bed, right? So when I saw that, I'm like, well, this is game over, obviously. They have to drop the charges. This isn't, you trust the institutions, right? Like the district attorney's office can't be unethical and corrupt. They know this is beyond reasonable doubt.
Let me ask you this, like, because, you're coming out and protesting, right? And you're organizing all these folks coming down there, making a lot of noise locally, challenging people, getting in their faces, et cetera, coming in and out of the courtroom. Have you always been skeptical of police? Is that where sort of you come from? You question the police as sort of a social activist?
No, I mean, if you look back on older stories I've written, I'm a right-wing guy. Like I'm a law and order guy. I'm a back the blue guy historically. During the BLM riots in 2020, we were very pro-police during that whole thing and didn't think that all police were like Derek Chauvin and just wanted to, and so to have this happen, it feels like a betrayal of the trust that you put in these institutions. To have the cowardly, and that's what they are, the cowards of Canton, the cowardly Canton police, who first got to that scene at 6 a.m. and did not find a single piece of taillight or a shoe. And then 12 hours later, when the state police took over, boom, they found taillight everywhere and a gigantic shoe, which somehow the Canton police missed. Now, if I'm the Canton police chief, I stand by my men and I say, look, my guys are competent. They would have seen that. Those were not there. But the cowards of Canton remain silent. And not a single officer in that entire department has any fortitude up and say, no. We need to put a stop to this. An innocent woman, you are trying to put her in a box for the rest of your life while her killers remain free in this town that we live in.
So are you from Canton? I know you're in Cape Cod tonight. Are you on vacation?
No, I'm on vacation. Yeah, it's the last night of vacation.
That's what I figured.
I'm from a little town called Holden, right next to Worcester, second
Gotcha.
biggest city in New England. So it's about an hour away. So
Okay.
I go to Canton a lot these days.
So let me ask you this. You've got a lot of followers. The people that showed up at that courthouse, those protesters, are they local folks from Canton, or are they followers of yours who have gotten, entrenched and committed to the story the way you have, who showed up from all over? Because I'm wondering, are we looking at potential jurors here?
Well, I don't know how many live in Norfolk County. There's a lot of counties, and the county lines are kind of weirdly drawn in Massachusetts. But I doubt, I would probably say 5 to 10% of that crowd is a potential juror because they live in Norfolk County. Obviously, they would not be picked for the jury if they had jury duty that day based
Right.
on their activism. But I mean, I would say like a very small percentage of that crowd is actually from Canton. I mean, these are people who are so outraged. I've never written a story like this that has gotten so much interest and outrage from people. Like if I died tomorrow, this movement would go on. People would keep protesting. I'm kind of like the leader of the movement, but it's taken on a life of its own. Yesterday at the Canton Town Select Board, one of the alleged perpetrators is on the Board of Selectmen, and a lot of Canton folks just showed up and began demanding he resign. I didn't urge anyone to do that. This is taken on a life of its own because it is that outrageous. I am not a conspiracy theorist.
Let me ask you this.
Let
me ask you this. Now, there were cheers for Karen Read on the way into the courtroom, but there were boos for other folks who were walking in. Who was that, and why was the crowd booing people who were walking in? I mean, because was it the prosecution? Was it an officer? Who was it?
That's Carl Dougal. He's a local moron. He's a Boston detective. He is the only member of the Boston Police Department that believes Karen Read did this. Normally when a cop gets killed, police officers go to court.
So again, I mean, you called him a name. I just got to be careful with that.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay.
I get it. That's the way, your show usually goes. You just tone it down just a little bit tonight in terms of the name calling. Because I don't know him. He could be a bright guy, could be the best guy in the world. I don't know. You have a problem with him. But he's from the Boston PD is what you're saying?
He's a Boston police detective.
Okay, so this took place in Canton, but the officers at the party and John O'Keefe and everyone else is really connected to Boston PD?
I mean, the only other person connected to Boston PD in that house is the homeowner, Brian Albert.
Okay.
He has a brother who's on Canton Police. He's got another brother on the Board of Selectmen. But, this took place in Canton. It just happened to be two Boston cops in a Boston suburb, like not Boston itself. And so Carl is a former coworker of his. And
That's his, wasn't that John O'Keefe's friend? Isn't that his friend?
Yeah, but a lot of John O'Keefe's friends are sitting on Karen Read's side, including some of John's ex-girlfriends. Imagine that, like ex-girlfriends aren't supposed to like the latest girlfriend, but they're sitting there with Karen on her side.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Let me ask you this. I mean, his friend is dead, right? And he believes what he believes. Do you think he's at fault here for believing what he believes at this point?
Yes. So first of all, I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nobody with who is that ignorant should be in charge of investigating any crimes at all. The fact that he's a Boston police detective makes me wonder how many times he has falsely arrested people for crimes that they did not commit. If he just
I get it,
bases this all on a hunch.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering what this scene is going to be like at the courthouse, right, for folks who are coming in. How about John O'Keefe's family?
Well, you know why we boo him, Vinny? Because anybody who is down there sitting on the prosecution side is knowingly supporting a sham. And every minute wasted on this sham prosecution of Karen Read is a minute longer that the real people who killed John O'Keefe are out there free. The FBI is investigating this. There's going to be indictments. There will be no trial in this. That is one thing I can almost guarantee you. There will be no trial. There will be indictments probably within the next 3 to 6 months would be my ballpark estimate.
All right. Turtle Boy, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you coming on, and Hope perhaps you'll come back in the future as we continue to track this case, things develop. And the only thing I would say from my perspective, just having covered trials for years, is that for family members and stuff going through, and it's their loved one, their friend that is the victim in the case, just a little, it's tough for them. It's really a difficult spot for them emotionally. Like, it's even tough for me just to sometimes approach them.
Right. I just want to make it clear that we didn't boo his mother or anything like that. I actually said, no, we're not going to say anything to his mother. I wanted to be very clear with that.
Okay.
Even his brother, I said the same thing. We're not going to do that. But Carl, it's a long story.
I know it's a long.
You don't like Carl.
And you can watch all of Turtle Boy's work on his blog, and you'll understand exactly what he's talking about tonight. But we appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Vinny.
Thanks so much. All right. I'm telling you, things are tense in the courtroom, out of the courtroom. Up next, we're going to speak with Karen Read's attorneys. Plus, coming up next hour.